Hello and welcome to TVB News. The government will expand its COVID vaccination scheme targeting the XBB variant to cover more high-risk individuals in the community starting next Thursday. A former government expert advisor said serious COVID cases currently make up the majority of those hospitalized in certain public hospitals. Timothy Lee has our top story.
Newest figures on the positive detection rate of specimens tested positive for COVID indicated a rise of around 2 percentage points on a weekly basis. The number remains far lower than that of the previous peak, but the Center for Health Protection emphasized that there is still an obvious increase in cases. A total of 30 serious or fatal cases were recorded last week. That's 19 more than the figure for the previous 7 days.
接近70%嘅病人係新冠嚟嘅。
This, as University of Hong Kong infectious disease specialist Professor Ivan Hung noted an increase in the hospitalization of patients suffering from serious COVID symptoms in Queen Mary Hospital in recent days. He said he believes another COVID outbreak has already occurred. Respiratory disease specialist Professor David Hui, meanwhile, noted a rise in hospitalization cases in the Prince of Wales Hospital in Sha Tin, most of them influenza. In a bid to combat the rising number of COVID infections, starting next Thursday, high-risk individuals in addition to those aged 65 or above and care home residents will get the XBB vaccine. They include those aged between 50 and 64, people suffering from chronic health conditions aged between 18 and 49, as well as pregnant women. They can register for the COVID jab online at private or general outpatient clinics, as well as 33 other locations. The Center for Health Protection said earlier this month around 20,000 people were vaccinated. The number is now at least 45,000. Around 70% of the vaccinations involve the XBB vaccine. As the growth in COVID cases continues alongside the ongoing winter flu season, Professor Ivan Hung expects this flu season will last longer than normal. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
Hong Kong lawmakers will discuss the legislation of Article 23 of the Basic Law this year. This, according to the government's annual legislative agenda submitted to the Legislative Council's Bill Committee. Introduced by the Security Bureau, the Safeguarding National Security Bill is set to be tabled to LegCo within the 2024 legislative session. But the agenda has not stated whether the bill will be introduced in the first or second half of the year. In 2003, the administration at the time tried to begin legislation for Article 23, but it prompted mass demonstrations. The Secretary for Security, Regina Ip, said following the social unrest in 2014 and 2019, citizens should be more aware of the importance of national security. With that, it's unlikely there will be any huge protests against the legislation, Ip said. A newly opened mega supermarket in Shenzhen attracted large crowds, with many coming from Hong Kong. This as SAR and mainland authorities are discussing restoring a multiple entry scheme to allow for easier cross-border travel. The new Costco supermarket is located at Shenzhen's Longhua district. Many of the city's residents made their way to the megastore to shop for daily necessities as well as luxury goods. Some spent over $1,000. Shenzhen travel agencies say they've organized several shopping tours at supermarkets recently. The Bank of East Asia's new headquarters at the Shanghai Development Zone in Shenzhen was opened today. The bank said it decided to move some of its headquarter functions there as an opportunity to boost cross-border financial services. The Bank of East Asia headquarters serves as the bank's service hub in the Greater Bay Area. It houses facilities such as FinTech, Innovation Center, and a data lab, which involve the participation of several artificial intelligence startup companies. The bank said it will allocate more of its Hong Kong headquarters functions to its Shanghai counterpart in the future. Chief Executive John Lee said via video conference He hopes further cooperation with Shanghai will showcase the advantages of the SAR's status as a global financial hub. Tesla will suspend most car production at its factory near Berlin from January 29th to February 11th. That's because it faces a lack of components due to shifts in transport routes because of attacks on vessels in the Red Sea by Houthi rebels. The U.S. electric vehicle maker is the first company to disclose an interruption to output due to the disruption. The attacks by Iranian-backed Houthi militants have forced the world's top shipping companies to avoid the Suez Canal, the fastest maritime route from Asia to Europe, which accounts for about 12% of global maritime traffic. Shipping giants such as Maersk and Hapag-Lloyd have been sending their vehicles on longer, more expensive journeys around South Africa's Cape of Good Hope. The extra route adds about 10 days in a journey from Asia to Northern Europe and about $1 million in extra fuel. Welcome back. Liu Jianchao, head of the International Department of the Chinese Communist Party, and the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken are scheduled to meet in Washington later today. The Taiwan issue is expected to be on the meeting's agenda, and the U.S. government is planning to send an unofficial delegation to visit the island. Beijing urges the U.S. to prudently handle matters related to Taiwan and halt such exchanges. Jackie Lin reports.
The U.S. State Department revealed its Secretary of State Antony Blinken is scheduled to meet senior Chinese official Liu Jianchao in Washington at 11 p.m. Hong Kong time. Liu is the head of the Chinese Communist Party's International Department. Reportedly, Daniel Crittenbrink, the U.S. State Department's top diplomat on East Asian and Pacific affairs, will join the meeting. The high-level meeting is set to discuss global and regional security concerns, including tensions on the South China Sea and Taiwan. As the meeting is held just one day ahead of Taiwan's elections, a senior U.S. administration official reportedly said Beijing would be the provocateur if it chose to respond to Taiwan's election outcome with additional military pressure or coercion. But that official said channels of communication will remain open with Beijing, including diplomatic and the recently resumed military-to-military channels. On Wednesday, Liu already had talks with U.S. Principal Deputy National Security Advisor Jonathan Feiner. Both sides reiterated the importance of the consensus reached by President Xi Jinping and U.S. President Joe Biden during the November summit in San Francisco. Liu expounded on the Chinese stance over issues surrounding Taiwan and the South China Sea, while Feiner underscored the importance of peace and stability in that region. Reportedly, the Biden administration is planning to send a high-level unofficial delegation to visit Taiwan after the Taiwan elections. Delegates include former high-ranking U.S. officials. In response, Beijing's foreign ministry said Taiwan is an inalienable part of China and opposes any forms of official exchanges between the U.S. and Taiwan. Jackie Lin, TVB News.
The U.S. Federal Aviation Administration is investigating whether Boeing failed to make sure a panel that blew off a jetliner in mid-flight last week was safe and manufactured to meet the design that regulators approved. Boeing said Thursday it would cooperate with the investigation, which is focusing on plugs used to fill spots for extra doors when those exits are not required for safety reasons on Boeing 737 MAX 9 jetliners. One of the two plugs on an Alaskan Airlines jetliner blew out shortly after the plane took off from Portland, leaving a hole in the plane. The FAA asked Boeing to respond within 10 business days. In the U.S., a new poll on Iowa voters found that among Republicans, former President Donald Trump maintains a dominant lead just days before the Republican caucus in the state. But former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley is opening up a clear lead over Florida Governor Ron DeSantis for second place. This report from NBC News.
Nikki Haley tonight shrugging off this hot mic Chris Christie critique, threatening to blunt her momentum in the final 4 days before the Iowa caucuses.
And she's going to get smoked. And you and I both know it. She's not up to this.
How do you convince folks he's wrong and you're up to this moment?
I don't have to convince people he's wrong because nobody in that crowd's asking me about that. I mean, they see politics is not personal for me. It is for the fellas. It's not for me. So get excited. 4 days until caucus.
Haley has ridden rising poll numbers into a battle for second place in Iowa behind Donald Trump, hoping to defy expectations here.
All the media pundits love to talk about how they know what's going to happen in Iowa. I trust that you did your homework. I trust that you know where you want the country to go.
Her crowd's now growing.
She's as qualified as any person running for president in the last couple decades.
But Haley's recent rise has put a political target on her back. The Trump campaign launching a new ad highlighting her views on Social Security this morning.
Haley's plan cuts Social Security benefits.
And Ron DeSantis, who has focused his campaign heavily on Iowa and needs a strong showing here, mocking her debate performance last night.
I think it was like a Hillary Clinton type performance.
Haley expecting to outlast the Florida governor.
It's going to be a two-person race. We know that. Our goal is not to worry about petty things that others say. It's more about what do we need to do to get that next vote.
That's the news. Thanks for watching. Have a great weekend.